Welcome to Fated, a podcast brought to you by Majella and Carlie, two romantically obsessed readers who believe that great books must include declarations of undying love and deep thrusts of desire. Diving into the spicy, smutty fantasy genre, we are here for both the rattling of stars and headboards, and our podcast starts with the worlds of SJM, but delves into other realms. Did we mention that washboard abs and wands of all kinds are welcome in this inclusive and magically charged space? No topic is off limits, and no one is forced to have only one favourite heroine. Welcome to Fated, where we are unabashedly and wholeheartedly hot and heavy for spicy fantasy fiction. It's time to sit down and smut up. Warning, spoilers ahead. Welcome to Fated, the podcast. I'm Majella.
And I'm Carlie, and we've hit record because we were having a really interesting conversation that I'm like, we need to bring this more to the actual listeners. These are the behind the scene conversations that Majella and I have when we catch up to do these recordings. So I have left Majella alone for 2 days, and she's like, oh, I just finished another book. I'm like, when did you start that book? Yesterday. Okay. Like this, I need to know what you're reading, Majella. I need to know what's happening. And then we're going to dive into our reading list for this year, going back and doing a bit of reminiscing and going through some of the books that we've read. So let's just sort of kick off where we were just chatting. So I said, what? And you were like, yeah, I've just finished Powerless.
By Lauren Roberts. And I don't even have my Kindle to show you with the cover, but I chose it because it's just, I had a few videos on TikTok that were like, this is the next viral book. This is the next Iron Flame. This is better than Iron Flame. And, you know, obviously we've just kind of did a Fourth Wing episode. I finished Iron Flame. I'm looking for something, and I've read a couple in the interim, and I've reread a couple in the interim since finishing Assassin's Blade and Iron Flame. And I just haven't felt it. I haven't felt that book feeling that you get when you're like, it's a good one. It's right. A good one. Okay. So I did have high expectations, and I can safely say that they were blown out of the water. So I do think it feels very it's that same kind of rollicking. It's a little bit, it's very Hunger Games. Like there's trials, there's, you know, levels in society, there's magic, but it's still set in a planet that feels very on Earth, I think. And there's a very, very slow burn, and there's tragedy, and but it's also, it just was so fun, but also, yeah, I really like the heroine. I really like the romantic interest.
Okay.
Well, I was really into it.
It's just been added to my TBR. So
yes,
it's got 25,500 ratings on Goodreads, nearly 6,000 reviews, and an average rating of 4 points. Not that we go by ratings, but like it just gives you an idea, right? Like, this is actually quite popular. And I have seen it on TikTok, and I'm like, do not add another book to your TBR, Carlie. But anyway, there it is. It's added in.
And it's one of two.
Hey?
It's one of two, and the next one doesn't come out till June 2024.
It's a trilogy. The Powerless trilogy.
Oh, well, it only says on Kindle, it says one of two. So maybe there's a third coming now that it's, you know, gone a little viral.
Well, that'll probably be a 2024 read. But look at me. I'm all fancy. If you're watching the video on YouTube, I've started doing this fancy thing that I see people doing on TikTok, and that makes me feel very like an official reader. But I'm only really doing it, annotation tabs. I'm only really doing it because for our podcast deep dives, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to flick to that line, or I want to flick to that scene. I'm really loving it. But look at me. This is a book, Iron Flame. I'm still here. I read like 70 pages last night. And I'm like, why is this feeling like such a big book? But it is 250,000 words, I think it is. Like, it's a big, chunky mother. Even though Majella read it in 2 days.
I think I read it in like 3 or 4. But it's also because that particular book especially, there was chunks where I skimmed because, especially in the beginning, there's a few repetitive fights, and I was just like, really?
Yeah, right.
Why? Like, why would we do this again? You know, so I just skimmed through.
Okay, that makes me, because I not comparing myself to you, but I was literally like, how? This is junk. Like I'm sitting down for a decent hour and reading every night, and I'm still like, that was only 60 pages. That said, completely compelling and still very, very much loving it and frothing. But I'm on page 427. So anyway, that was a conversation we were just having. Like, this is what happens. I get on, I say, hi, Majella, how's the last 24, 48 hours been? And she tells me, oh, I read another book and I love it. Okay, very good. School holidays are coming for me. 8 weeks of summer holidays here. I am like, yes, there's going to be many days I'm not getting out of bed until 10 a.m. because I'm reading and my children can fend for themselves. So I'm very excited. But we wanted to do a little episode, a little kind of 2023 wrap up, and look back over our year and what we've read, and just discuss some of our favorite books and some of the books that maybe, you know, we read but didn't love, but that's okay because they can't all be absolute bangers. So I went to my Goodreads because I keep my little reading challenge in there. Where do you go? Your Kindle library?
I went to Kindle. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next year I might keep even better notes on what I'm reading because I'm doing this podcast now. But have you ever done the Goodreads reading challenge? I've done it for 2 years now. No. So it's kind of like a little, like, how many books would you like to read for the year? And for me, I'm a goal setter. I like to have something to kind of keep me motivated. Although since getting more into fantasy romance, I don't think I need any motivation. But for me, this year has really been about rediscovering my love of reading. And early in the year, in January, I just set my goal for the year of I'm only going to read fiction as much as possible, unless there was something I had to read maybe for my work. That was I went into January going, just fun, just fiction. Let's try lots of different kind of genres. I mean, it's very obvious that I fell very quickly into the romance genre and the smut genre, if you look at my Goodreads list. And you can go follow me on Goodreads if you like. So looking back over the year, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I'm sitting at, let me just get it up, because now I just had to go and add to my TBR. So let me get my reading chart.
I feel like I have to go put a Goodreads together as well, just so that we have some like visual documentation. Not for a challenge though.
It's apparently, you know, people are like, it's not the best app, blah, blah, it's a bit clunky. For an elder millennial like me, it's simple to navigate. It's, you know, no bells and whistles. I can find books easily and I can add them to my little reading challenge. So yeah, maybe we could set one up for next year. I did have the goal, again, not pressuring myself, to read 50 books. And I'm sitting at 36 3/4, which is huge for me after many, many years of not reading fiction at all. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, so 50 books is one a week almost. Like, that's a very
I'm 9 behind. I'm 9 behind my goal, and I've got 4 weeks, so that's okay. School holidays, I can power through a couple. So I started the year out with my favorite fiction author in a very different genre. So do you want me to start with that?
Sure.
Yeah. So one of my all-time favorites, I've actually met her in person and hugged her and completely cried and fangirled, and I just adore her as a human. One of my favorite all-time authors is Holly Ringland. She's an Australian author, and she's written 2 fiction pieces that are very harrowing stories. And she released her second one in December last year, and I read it sort of over the summer break. And the final pages of that book I was reading on the plane home from our family holiday, sobbing so loudly that people around me were very concerned, and my children were very embarrassed and were telling me to just, Mum, stop reading that book. And that book was The 7 Skins of Esther Wilding. It's a story of sisters and death and family dynamics, and it's actually feels a bit fantastical because it takes her across to like these incredible islands looking at folklore and story. It's quite beautiful. So highly recommend. That was a 5-star for me in January, The 7 Skins of Esther Wilding. That's how I started my year, which was a great start. Do you remember what you were reading back at the start of the year?
All of mine blur a little, so I don't think mine are really going to be in chronological
Yeah.
order because it is a bit of a wash. I
And you
definitely
read
know
them
that
so
I read.
fast. Like, was that a Tuesday or a Wednesday of that week when I read 12 books?
I mean, I have only read 38 books across the year in the fantasy romantasy genre, and I've read about 30 in like biographies and business books, and so and I feel like those types of books, especially when they're more productive. There's more of an outcome focused learning and education. I don't necessarily finish those. Like they're not a start to finish. They're more like I might read chapters or things that are really relevant to me. Or I might read half the book and then be like, yeah, I think I got everything I need out of that book. So I don't really, and I read them differently. I think you read fiction and nonfiction very differently. But I guess I'll start with, I'll start with, it doesn't matter because we're going to get through all of them. The series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, she has many books, but she has two series that are related to each other, where the worlds cross over, but there's two different heroines and two different love interests. And so I read from one series and one from the other. So A Light in the Flame and A Fire in the Flesh is from one series, and then I read like The Crown of Gilded Bones, The War of Two Queens, A Soul of Ash and Blood, and they're from the other series. And she was one of my first Jennifer L. Armentrout. I read her before I read Sarah J. Maas. I think I came in high on the smut scale in terms of where I started with romantasy. Like really easy, I guess how you maybe started with romance, and it was very easy to digest. Popcorn, fast, light, not necessarily complicated plots, not complex world building, just like a good ride, like a good fun time. So I started with, I'll speak about the next author next, but Jennifer was in that beginning stages where I was looking for things that felt almost more like fairy tales with, like grown-up magic and grown-up spice. So I started with her sometime early in the year, and now I've read everything that in all of those series, and that's her latest work. So I've started to go back in her catalogue, and they're a little hit and miss for me, so I'll talk about them later. But I definitely feel like authors, their style changes, and obviously the more they write, usually the better they get, and they become more nuanced, and they become better storytellers, and they may not stick to the stereotypical tropes as much. So I think, I'm not sure if going backwards in someone's kind of like collection is the right thing to do, but I just love this story, this story of these characters, that I really want more of that, and I guess that's what I'm seeking in her catalogue.
She's written.
So that was kind of
really prolific too, isn't she? So 60 something books or 80 books or something, and I didn't realize she'd written so many. Whoa.
And lots of real young adult. Like she's definitely got series that are more aimed at teenagers.
Okay, right. All right. I would really love to get to a couple of hers next year, because again, I see that around a lot, and you highly recommend that series. So great. That was a good way to kick off the year then, if that was a good series you enjoyed.
Oh, yeah. And then I had to wait 9 months for the last installment, which I read like a month ago in 4 hours or something. I was like, I've waited so long for this. I'll talk about that one later.
Lucky there's so many other books to choose from in between, right? We're so blessed that we can just go and jump into something else. Then I went straight from my little harrowing, like, heartbreaking, sobbing kind of story, which I really do love, and I still am going to read a lot of that in the next year. Straight into my first smart book of the year. And was it amazing? Yes, it was. Have you heard of the author Kandi Steiner?
No.
Okay. So I read A Love Letter to Whiskey. It's called A Love Letter to Whiskey. It's been around since like 2016, and I don't even know. Like, I think at that point I'd had my Kindle for a couple of months, and I was just kind of looking at what was available for free on Kindle Unlimited, and this was amazing. I read it by the pool on family holiday. Whew, blushed a lot. So, just hot, just really hot, and also a great story. I'm not going to go into all of the blurbs. You guys can go and check it out, but love triangles, maybe even like a few love triangles in this one. I'm trying to remember back to what it was about. I just remember it really got my engine revving. But she loved her writing, really, really loved it. So check out Kandi Steiner, A Love Letter to Whiskey. That was fabulous, and that was in January as well for me. That really kicked me off into the year. I was like, I need more of these. I need more of these, thank you. Yes, please.
That's in the romance genre, not the romantasy.
Definitely romance. Yeah, no fantasy, no romantasy in that one. That was just a full-blown smut novel. But I loved it. I might just go back and reread that one as well.
Dark romance, or is it just romance?
That one wasn't too dark. I mean, let's say if we're saying really dark and depraved is like Haunting Adeline, or dark is something maybe like the Flock series by Kate Stewart. This wasn't as dark as those at all. I think it's a great one for people getting into the genre. Highly recommend. I rated it a 4 out of 5.
Good to know.
Yeah. And then I went in and read A Court of Frost and Starlight. So I had read the Agitators series towards the end of 2022. That, as we've said before, like that was my gateway drug into fantasy romance. So I then jumped in and read A Court of Frost and Starlight. Yes. And Silver Flames later in the year. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But that's when I read that. That was obviously, I don't know, people call it a filler book or a novella style kind of book in the series. I devoured that one pretty quick and it was great. Kept me intrigued, kept me interested. That's probably
I think she wrote that one when her dad was really sick and then she fell pregnant. So her dad had a heart attack or something happened and they thought they were going to lose him. And so that book was kind of written after he made it. And she had this little, and then she fell pregnant, I think, during the writing of that as well. So it was this kind of book that I think she was in a very, in her real world, there was a lot happening, like a lot of life and death and processing. And I feel like that kind of is reflected in the book in a way. Like that book felt like the most sort of soft in a way, you know. Well, then I feel like I delved into a particular author. And I think that what happens is if I find an author I like, I then go through her whole collection. And so I still haven't stumbled across Sarah J. Maas. There was a little bit of resistance there because the same as with Harry Potter, the same as with Twilight, with 50 Shades, when anything gets a bit too hyped, I haven't jumped onto it before the hype, I get a bit like, oh, it's gone so mainstream now. Like, how good can it really be? I don't want to be just one of the masses. It's a real, like, snobby thing that kicks in. So I was like, I'm not reading. And also, I really don't like the covers of the Agitators series. I'm not really into colour. And I just think that they're very, like, the colours, too primary. They're too primary. I'm just not into them. It doesn't, to me, those covers don't symbolize anything about how those books feel. Like, put Valaris on the front cover. Put, like, the Summer Court. Put the Surreal. Put the Bat Boys. Like,
okay, that's so interesting because that would have turned me way off from getting into the series. Those covers got me in.
Those covers were repellent to me. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I was at that point where I was like, I don't want to be sitting in a cafe reading and there's a Surreal on the front cover. I loved the modern, simple, bright. I've obviously still got them displayed. I really love it. But I'm thinking she's since brought out another like cover set, hasn't she? Unveiled the new covers.
Yes.
Or were they the new covers? Maybe there was an original set and these were the new covers. I'm just trying to look back.
Well, I think that Throne of Glass and Crescent City fall much more into that traditional romanticy look. Like there's a little bit of metallics, there's more epic scenes, there's lots of filigree and details, and it's a little bit more ornate. So maybe that is a new.
Some really beautiful, like a Quarter Frost and Starlight. When I look it up, there's a cover that's beautiful. Like it's got a picture, like a silhouette of Pharaoh with her ink on her arm, and then this incredible. I don't know if that's been released to everyone or if there's special editions, because there's so many special editions out there as well that are beautiful. So anyway, you don't have to have the primary colours. That's fine. You can go and buy a beautiful.
Well, everything's on my Kindle. Well, I do have those because they were lent to me by my sister. But I do think, because I'm a rereader, once I've read it once on Kindle, if I know that I'm going to reread, that's when I will buy it in the physical form, because then I want to have it so I can touch it and I can pick it up. But, if I don't love it, and I'm only going to do a one read, then I don't need to have the physical copy. There's limited book space, on a bookshelf. So anyway, I got into this author called Nikki St. Croix, and she is definitely at the heavy end of spice and smut and dark romance. She is romantasy. It's vampires. She did a series about a reimagining of Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. She's done like demons. Like it's very much like it feels quite young, in that it feels like the first type of crush romance, that real, when you become like, so you really lose yourself over a boy, and they're in their late teens, early 20s as per usual, but I read a lot of them. So there was like a whole series called The Ruthless Demon King, books 1, 2, and 3. The Hot Vampire Next Door, books 1, 2, and 3. The Peter Pan series was called The Never King, The Dark One, Their Vicious Darling, and The Fey Princes. And then there was The Dark Vampire Curse. So they're all, and if you look at her covers, they're all quite dark. They have that, often they have skulls but the writing is like crack. It is so consumable, and the men in it are hot and possessive and a little bit feral, but like have this, kind of seed of integrity and this thread of kind of golden-hearted goodness, but it's hidden underneath fangs and wings and, burning red coal eyes. And, there's a little bit of the heroine is always like, I shouldn't fall for him because he's the baddest of the bunch, or his reputation, he's ruthless. Literally, it's in the title, Ruthless Demon King, Hot Vampire.
If we look at our depravity scale, which is a thing that I think we need to really create for our podcast, a depravity scale, like where is it? If out of 5, if 5 is like, heavy, asphyxiation, maybe rape scenes, like really, 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 really dark, and 1 is like, holding hands and kissing.
I think the the smut would be a 4, but it's not dark smut. It's very love-driven sex between the two like main characters. So it's quite graphic, but it's not, there's no choking, asphyxiation, there's no bondage, rape, any of that. It's very like when they get the girl, they worship her, they ravish her, like, but outside of that, there's a lot of like, territorial war and primal kind of ownership and, morally grey decisions about, what they're sort of, how they're ruling or running they're not really countries, I guess, the areas in which they live. But they're so easy to read, and they're just really fun. They're just really fun because the heroine is still strong and sassy, and she's not an easy catch, and there's always some kind of angst, or like the mother died young, and so she doesn't realize that she's half vampire anyway, and and the vampires have secretly been fighting over her because she's part royalty, but she doesn't know this, and those kind of things.
Okay.
But it's kind of set in an earthly realm, so usually the heroine doesn't realize that there's even these people next door, or if she does, she doesn't realize the vastness of the world that they inhabit. Like, she might be like, oh, there's a hot guy next door and he doesn't come out until nighttime, and I'm fairly sure he's a vampire, but there's vampires in our city, we know that kind of thing. But then she gets to know him, and then suddenly there's like a whole underground movement that she was unaware of, and that humans are just pawns in the chessboard of power plays. And she keeps writing them, so I think she's very like she can churn out a series quite quickly. Like, she just needs a concept, and she's got lots of loyal readers who she's got a few subscriptions where you can pay, and you can get updates, like you get a chapter a week of her new book kind of thing, which I think is really a cool concept to kind of keep people constantly engaged. But as an author, I think that would be hard, because you are relentlessly having to churn out
content.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I really enjoyed. I feel like that was such a great like dive into the pool of fun. Yes, exactly. That is the cover. And the Peter Pan one is the darkest. And I've read that in cafes and at breakfast, and it's wild. There is some like, that one is probably sitting more into the dark smut.
Oh yeah, Hot Vampire Next Door. It's such a literal title. I love it. Hot Vampire Next Door. Well, if you love vampires, you really need to read Carissa Broadbent, because if you love vampires, then you're going to love that series. You need to.
She's on my list. I've picked her up. I've tried A Serpent in the Night. I've got it. I'm 3% in.
I'm just looking at Nikki St. Crow's covers and thinking, yeah, well, I guess now I see why you don't really love the Agitators ones, because you love horrendously terrifying. That would mean that no one would approach you at the cafe if you were reading that. Okay.
Oh my God. Or people would look at me and be like, she knows. She knows.
She's terrifying. I wouldn't go near you. All right, cool. Nikki St. Crow added to the list. So my next one in January was, and I know it sounds like we're going to be here for hours, I have huge gaps. It jumps to like June. But I tried a couple of Colleen Hoover books, and I did that because I think that was around the time I was like, oh, let's go into Book Talk and see what this little space is like. And I fell down the Colleen Hoover rabbit hole. And I was like, well, again, let's have a look. Like 1 million ratings on this book called Reminders of Him. So I read that, and it was okay. It was about again, it's not even romance. She's more, for me, very young adult fiction. It's very non-spicy, really, at all. There's no spice in this. But it's about a troubled young mother who went to prison for 5 years for a tragic car accident that happened where she was in control of the car and somebody passed away. And she has a baby in prison that's then taken and living somewhere else. And so she gets out of prison, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go too much into it, because I really was like, meh. Colleen Hoover, I know people love her books. I do not love her books. They're not for me. They're just too young for me. And I've got, I then bought Verity and It Ends With Us and a couple of others, and I just couldn't. And it was interesting because I was like, but everyone loves this. Grown women on Book Talk are saying they love it. Why can I not really get into it? And I just had to accept at some point that she's just not my author. It's not my style. It's not what I'm into. But I did give Reminders of Him a go. It was okay. And I think later in the year, Verity and maybe It Ends With Us, and maybe one other, but I haven't even actually listed them in my Goodreads. So that was my Colleen Hoover phase that lasted a little while, and I just couldn't get into it because what I really got into was hockey romance. Hockey romance.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you either of us have done no Colleen and definitely haven't done any hockey romance.
So the next one I read was called Puck Me Secretly by Odette Stone. Delicious man on the cover. I mean, hello, big smile, stubble, strong jawline, chiseled abs. Got me. Sold. Download. Let's go. And I'm an Australian. We don't really have hockey here, ice hockey.
Yep.
I am now a very big fan of some of the Canadian ice hockey teams, and I do sometimes make my kids watch that on KO and the sports channels, because especially just the warm up. But this was like your classic, this is from a series called the Vancouver Wolves Hockey. This is book number 1. And the female main character, pure, has never had an orgasm, right? But is looking for someone who'll give her that, wants to find real passionate love. And so she's on a plane, the old classic, there's so many of this trope, right? You're on a plane and there's turbulence and the plane's going to crash. And so you talk to the handsome, rugged man beside you and you tell him all of your, secrets, and she blurts out that she's never had an orgasm. So who do we think is going to give her that at some point in the book? Right? Because they land, first day at a new job at the Vancouver Wolves hockey team. She's got the job, she's working there, and who walks in? Max, the incredible hockey player, who's a bit of a player. He sees her, la, 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 fall in love. You know what happens. Loved it.
Sure.
Loved it. Devoured it. Smashed it down. They are my little palate cleansers, those books. And so that really began an absolute obsession with hockey this year. And I'll talk about a few other hockey books that I've read that have become absolute favourites of mine in a second. So Puck Me Secretly was great.
I mean, the title sounds, it tells you really all you need to know in those few words, really.
And I mean, who doesn't...
Yeah.
Well, isn't it totally believable that you've got a woman in her mid-20s that's never had an orgasm? Actually, yes, it is very believable.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's totally, but I also think there is something just appealing about a very fit, virile, powerful man who is physically in his prime, like at anything, but especially when you're like, I guess at the pinnacle of your prowess at something is celebrated. That is very appealing, obviously, which is why sports is so revered.
That's right. And they have to keep it a secret because it's her job. Like, she works there and keeping it professional. So I always love that, a little bit of secret, in the broom closet kind of action at work. Or he has to pretend to be a dick to her and, not really be that interested, but really all he wants is to rip her clothes off and make her scream his name.
So maybe... is the hockey romance the new Mills and Boone? Is that what we would call it, do you think?
Definitely. I feel like it should have its own subgenre, hockey romance. And this is funny. I want Majella to go and search hockey romance on Book Talk and just be fed a few fun TikTok kind of experiences. Because
I will read a book. I will go. I mean, I'm not close to anything, but it just, I feel like once you get into the fantasy aspect of romance and smart, it's very hard to go back to just humans.
I don't have that problem. No, I just don't have that problem. I can jump back and forward. It's very easy. But they're devoured differently. It's, as I said, mainly listen to them on audio. They are a palate cleanser between something as big and heavy and complex as in physically heavy, Iron Flame. So that was my beginning, and I've got lots more hockey coming. So what was next for you?
I think this is when I finally delved into Agitators. I gave up and I was like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I will stop fighting this. And then Agitators became Throne of Glass series, which then became Crescent City, because I get stuck on an author. So and also Sarah J. Maas, her worlds are so epic that was a big, like there's nothing else like it. I mean, there are huge complex worlds that other fantasy writers have written, like Lord of the Rings, for example. But Sarah J. Maas has woven her stories together across. I was like, I don't know, I don't want to do any plot because you haven't got to the end of anything yet. So she's just really good at world building and connecting you to the characters and wanting to follow them through the entire adventure. Like her three heroines, Feyre, Aelin, and Bryce, are just so compelling and multi-layered, and you want to be them, but you also want to be their best friend, and you see yourself in them and making similar decisions, but also sometimes they're so foreign to you that it's something that's so eye-opening as well, to be like, wow, I would never have responded like that, or I can't fathom what that would be like to be in that situation. So I did then all of Akatar, and then, which is five books or six?
Five. Yeah.
And then, and especially the last one, Silver Flames, that's massive. It's literally the biggest book by far out of all of them. And it's quite divisive, that one, the Silver Flames. People are very they haven't liked Nesta because Nesta hasn't been kind to Feyre. Is a hard character to like.
Brilliant book.
But I find her very compelling, and Cassian is just sex on legs. Like, he is incredible, but he is also a teddy bear. So you have this warrior who is so primal and feral and sexy, but is then also the sweet kind of boy next door kind of energy, and really loyal, and would definitely, your mum would love him.
Trying to save everyone, literally save everyone. I love this because February I read Silver Flames, so maybe around the same time we were doing the thing. So I read A Court of Silver Flames, and you loved it, and we're going to do a whole episode on that at some point as well.
I bought them all on Kindle in May because I checked the dates, but I had already read the physical copy before that, so I bought them on Kindle then because I knew that I was going to be going overseas for a month, and I was like, I need to be able to read these because I'm going to be away from the physical copies because these books are quite dense.
So that is definitely something I want to read after I finish Throne of Glass. So yes, I love that you did all of them. So
all right. 15 books. That was a big chunk of time. I think that was a few months. Because I also reread too. I'd read Akatar, read 2 books in Throne of Glass, go back and read some more Akatar, reread.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that you can hold all of those worlds and characters and jump across to different series. That's quite a gift, Majella.
It's because I'm in the world. It feels really it's the same as if I was driving between suburbs or between cities. It just feels there's such retention because I feel like I'm in it when I'm reading it, which is why I said in our earlier messages when I was tallying these all up, I was like, oh my God, do I have no life? What what have I done all year? I have just read books. I need to make this my job somehow because obviously I'm good at it. And I surely I could be paid to read somehow.
I think that's something I want to explore maybe next year is how do we maybe get some advanced reader copies and get a little bit more into that world as well. Okay, so moving right along, I jumped from A Court of Silver Flames into a couple of autobiographies. So I don't mind listening to them. So I listened to Matthew Perry's book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. I'm not going to talk about that because I'll cry because I'm still really upset about his passing. And I listened to Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mum Died. And that was really heavy, but also I enjoyed it because it's very, very similar kind of some storylines to my personal life. So I listened to both of them on audio And I also read Daisy Jones and the Six. Have you read any Taylor Jenkins Reid? So The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, Carissa is back.
No, I haven't. I've got Daisy Jones, but I watched the TV show
Yep.
before I read the book, and then I found it really hard to start the book because the TV show is so cool, like so cool.
The book's great. The book's cool too. It's very different though. But I loved the book, so I read the book first, and then I was frothing for the TV show to come out. Loved both of them. But yeah, Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author that I've discovered in 2023 who I really, really love. Sorry, I discovered her last year when I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but yes, this year I've read a number of hers. So I went into that, and then I went back to smut, and I went to J.L. Seggar's book called Restore Me. Again, not fantasy. So as I'm showing you, I dip in and out. But gosh, this was hot. This was hot. So this is about Dominic Alexander. So Dominic Alexander is my late husband's best friend and the last man on earth that I should want. He's arrogant, dismissive, and up until recently has only ever used his dark eyes to look right through me. She's known him for 12 years. He's just been an arsehole to her the whole time. Why has he been an arsehole to her the whole time? Because he's in love with her. And again, his best friend's wife. Do I go on? I mean, it's freaking hot.
Right, into it. I feel like, damn, would it be better with some like wings? Or
yeah, probably.
You know, that's how I feel now. I'm just like, man, it feels a little one-dimensional.
Oh, look, sometimes we need to be grounded in reality. Not that this is really my reality at all, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
So then he starts being a bit nice to her, and it's like, what's going on? The gold flecks in his hazel eyes. He's ridiculously, of course, good looking. The way he scrunches up his nose when we're arguing, like, it's just, oh my God. Smut's good. High smut. Slow burn, which is, that's one of my favorite tropes. The taboo of wanting your best friend's wife, and she thinks, anyway.
But he's passed away, so she's single.
She's single, and so, but there's family dynamics. She's still really obviously close with the family, and she's still seen as the daughter-in-law, and he's still seen sort of as the son's best. There's some dynamics in there. Look, again. Is it a literary masterpiece? No, but it's bloody great. It's amazing. And all the reviews are like, oh my God, this is amazing. So she's got Revive Me and Restore Me. So this is number 1, Restore Me, that I read. And I did read Revive Me now thinking about that, but I haven't listed it. I'll have to add that. Revive Me. So both of them were great. So if you're looking for some smut, some hot romance with a really hot guy that starts out being an absolute arsehole, which just, again, for me, just seems to be a really, really attractive trope. I don't know what that says about my psyche. And he's the total opposite of the man that I have married in real life. But I love it. So I did that one next. Oh, and then I discovered Meghan Quinn. Okay, you go next, or I'll keep talking.
Okay, cool. Well, I think I'm now up to Fourth Wing. And then after that, I did Assassin's Blade, and then I did Iron Flame. So those were kind of my books that I did. Because I think I got onto Fourth Wing a little bit later than everyone. There was the hype around it, but I didn't get on the hype at the very beginning. And so I read.
It was released like May or something, wasn't it? April, May? Or maybe around that anyway. I didn't get into it till October.
I read it like maybe August, and I read that, and then I read Assassin's Blade because that is the book before Throne of Glass, like the prequel in a way. But I had already read Throne of Glass and didn't realize it was sort of meant to be. And I wish that I had read it first because it really does allow you to understand Selena / Aelin better. But I didn't, and so Fourth Wing, and then Assassin's Blade, and then Iron Flame was quite a beating on my heart. I feel like Fourth Wing, there is a lot of death, and it's quite intense. It is a Hunger Games-esque score, like it is ruthless in many ways. And then Assassin's Blade is just heartbreaking. and then like there is no happy ending there. And then Iron Flame is a cliffhanger, which I can't speak of because Carlie hasn't read it yet. And but she's close. She's close to the end, and I wonder if she sees what's coming. But it was intense, and I needed some time to recover. And that's when I had that couple of weeks where just nothing called me. I just felt like I reread books. I went back to ACOTAR. I just, I started a few books. I started that Serpent in the Night that you recommended. I started maybe like 3 or 4 other books that I have been talked about on TikTok, but I just couldn't, because I was looking for a really specific feeling that I had gotten from certain books.
Yeah.
And I think that does, which is going to, I think we'll talk about that in that episode where we talk about the writing versus the plot. Yeah. Once you've read a book where the writing and the plot is exceptional, it's very hard to explain the visceral reaction your body has when it's experiencing that story, because you're so in it, and the story itself is compelling, but the way it is written draws you into that world in a way that feels like a hypnotic drug, and is so dense and deep and complex that it has enough for you to be able to visualize it like a real world. The same as what happens with Harry Potter, which I know that you didn't connect with that, Carlie, but that same world building of people wanted to live there. They wanted to have the Sorting Hat experience. They want to have wands. They want to be able to have broomsticks. I was lost. I was floating around after these books, and and then I will tell you about what book I ended up with after you've shared your next thing.
Okay. All right. So then I met Meghan Quinn. Have you heard of Meghan Quinn before I even mentioned her? Because I bang on about her a lot now.
I know her through you, but I still have not read any of hers.
All right. So she's she's #1 Amazon and USA Today bestseller. Her book, she's got a book that just released yesterday, and it actually knocked Iron Flame from the top spot.
Did it?
I know.
But she's not fantasy, right? She's just romance.
No. And I love that. I'm like, go, you little smutty romance novelist. She's amazing. Why do I love Meghan Quinn? Because the first one I read was actually book number 3 in the Vancouver Agitators. Again, hockey. So she's got this incredible series called the Vancouver Agitators. Totally made up hockey team. But it's hilarious because now on Book Talk, people, like they do with, Iron Flame, Fourth Wing, ACOTAR, they've created who would be on the team from like real life players. So you can go on, who would be? Well, that would be him. That would be Halsey. That would be this character, blah, blah, blah. So it's quite funny. Anyway, the Vancouver Agitators. Meghan Quinn is unhinged. Like, she is so funny in her sex scenes. And you read the sex scenes and you're like, yeah, I could imagine myself literally having that thought. But when you read it on page, you're like, oh my God, that is so hilarious. She's really witty. Her characters are really funny, a bit goofy, but there's still so much heat and spice in her books. And she's, again, prolific. She pumps them out. I follow her on Instagram. She's like, yay, I'm just rewarding myself with an ice cream because I wrote 30,000 words today. Like, she just pours out of her. So I've read all of the Vancouver Agitators. So I'm just trying to look that up. So that is Kiss and Don't Tell, Those 3 Little Words, and Right Man, Right Time. And yesterday, her latest one in that series dropped. So everyone's been hanging out to meet not meet the new character, but hear his love story. And that one dropped yesterday, and it's called He's Not My Type. So I feel like I'm representing the readers, listeners who want just some romance, smart, lighter, fluffy stuff, but still want to feel their molten core and the heat pulling in your loins, right? So highly recommend Meghan Quinn. Funny, as I said. I've also read Vacation Wars by her, and then that also led me into my other favorite romance novelist, again, not fantasy, and that's Tessa Bailey. And I've read a number of Tessa Baileys, and I've blushed by myself in the car listening to Tessa Bailey on the way back from dropping my children at school, chapter 22 of It Happened One Last Summer. Happened last summer. I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. It happened last summer. Oh, but on the boat scene with the grumpy captain. So, yeah, if you're listening to this and you're like, fantasy's not my thing, or I like a bit of fantasy, but I like to dip back out, Meghan, Quinn, Tessa Bailey have kept me very, very happy this year. Very, very happy. I've also read Meghan Quinn's The Other Brother. Like, there's a whole list here. Anyway, that was fun. Oh, and The Way I Hate Him. Oh, and Fix Her Up and Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. And I've just finished Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey, which is a Christmas one. So there's a bit of Tessa and a bit of Meghan.
Okay. I mean, I haven't tried either. And I think I do have, like, I definitely feel like I have a little bit of hesitation about pure romance. Like, there's something about it where I feel a little bit snobby, or it does feel which is like not at just like it's just a little bit more lowbrow, a bit more basic, you know, like but I don't think, like, I think anyone who can write and publish a book, incredible, especially anyone that can capture, you know, the sort of eroticism and sensuality that appeals to women. But it's a real, like, it's a hangover from the Bills and Boone era of like, oh, like these are just tropes. They're just really stereotypical.
Yep. And I'm really here for it.
And I feel like I can't judge until I've tried.
Well, it's hilarious because the Good Friday sale last week, the only thing I bought was some books from Big W because I had like half price. So my box arrived yesterday. And it's that, look how big that box is, Majella. Oh my God. Anyway, guess what's in there? Another hockey romance.
Meghan Quinn.
A new author, Hannah Grace. I've been seeing raving reviews about this. It's called Icebreaker. Look how cute it is. It's so cute. So anyway, hockey. Bloody hell, hockey. All right. What else did you read? Anything else on your list that's
I'm nearly at the end of the year, up to date now, so I feel like I did a little dabble with JD Linton. She's got a bit of a viral thing happening currently on TikTok, and she's got like a little duology, The Last Storm and The Last Drake, which is like a dragon, someone who turns from human to dragon. And I really like the plot of this. I really like the story. I'm really struggling with some of the, like the writing and the editing and just how quickly it's sort of, like the burn was not slow. Like it was kind of like, it was very quick from like, we don't like each other and everything is bad, to suddenly it's like, we are soulmates and we will be together for every lifetime that ever will exist ever in the future. Which I think I would like them. Like I like them together. It's just that the journey from the extreme dislike and frustration and unhappiness about their own lives to, oh my God, I have to be with him. She is my world. She is my everything. Was just too fast. I think there's something about it that hasn't resonated. So I've really struggled with that one.
Yeah.
It's one of the only books that I haven't finished yet. I want to finish it because I want to know how it ends. Like I'm invested in the story. Yeah. I'm just really struggling with, like they are so lovesick now that I'm a little bit like, I'm just like, oh my God, shut up. Like I get it. You love him. She loves you. You guys are meant to be. Yeah. Awesome. Like so happy for you. But also like don't keep telling me every third sentence.
Don't read the hockey romances then.
But I feel like it's because they're magical as well, and because they've gone from these really extreme, like they were both like one was about to be married off, and one was like had a traumatic upbringing, and another one lost a parent, blah blah blah. There's lots of, it just was too fast from terrible to like euphoric.
Okay.
And then my last,
But you're going to persist and...
I will, because I want to know how this ends.
Yeah.
And I'm just also not sure if it's just been my mood. You know how sometimes, which is what I wanted to discuss in another episode is like, what part of the cycle are you in, and does it affect the outcome of your reading? And I've just got my period, so I feel like maybe I was a little bit too ragey, like before, to really appreciate. I should have gone for a real dark romantasy instead. Or manacled, because apparently, I mean, have you seen the reaction videos?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it. I don't know if you'll have that response because you didn't read Harry Potter or you didn't get into Harry Potter, but because it's a fanfic about Harry Potter.
Is this like the unpublishable book that's like almost illegal?
Yeah. Yes. It is apparently like PTSD inducing. It is like trauma. Like but it's also, people are like, it is the best thing I've ever read. So there's like,
whoa.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure if I can do it, but I really want to do it.
Okay.
But they look broken.
It's nice to know that you can just shut the cover and walk away if needed.
No, you can't. Look what happened after like Assassin's Blade, and like and parts of Kingdom of Ash, like that. Like I still think about things that happened in there and think like, why did they stay with you. So the last book I read is the book that I was telling you about at the start of the episode, which is Powerless by Lauren Roberts, which ironically I've just realized has zero smut in it, like currently. Like, but I think it is highly erotic and sexually charged. But I feel like now that I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh my God, like I don't think there is a literal sex scene.
Wow. How good's that writing then?
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so now, and you're literally like so like the way she has written it, and I'm like, surely there will be in the next book, because it's all being set up for that.
There's a love interest in the storyline around that.
Yes, and an obvious attraction, and but
you need to next time I've got pink sticky notes for all the sex scenes, all the smut scenes, all the kisses, and then you can be like, oh yeah, there was none in that one.
Yeah, I just think
run out of pink tabs.
Maybe a closed door, isn't that what they call it? Like closed door scenes, because it's like they just kiss and then they go into the bedroom and close the door. So you just imagine what happens. And people are like, this is not what I signed up for. Yeah, it's wild. I wonder if she'll go further in the next book, but it did not feel like anything was missing.
That's great writing. That's great.
That's what I mean. It was so good. Like it was so like you were straight in that world. Like I think within 10 pages I was in.
Okay.
Yeah, and nothing even happens, I think, really.
Bumping it up the list. Okay. Well, I around August time jumped into a series. I can't even tell you how I got it. Someone recommended it. I think someone said, this is as good as Agitators. I think someone said that, and I went, well, all right, I'm going away for August. I was going away for a few days with some girlfriends, download it to my Kindle. Oh my God. So this was the Nyaxia series of 2 books by Carissa Broadbent. The first one is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And I read straight after that book number 2, which is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I freaking loved these 2 books. So these are a vampire, it's a vampire world and human or vampire. And it says, like, the blurb is, the rules of survival are the same. Never trust, never yield, and always, always guard your heart. And it's about the adopted human daughter of the Nightborn vampire king. And her name's Araya. And I love her. She's one of my favorite characters now. Right up there with Aelin, Selena, and Violet and Feyre. Like, I just loved Araya. And I didn't know if I'd love a vampire story, because Twilight was okay. It wasn't like my favorite kind of genre. But I loved it. And Ryan is hot. He's obviously the antagonist and her rival. And there's again, they need to kill each other or make an alliance. Everything about Ryan is dangerous, but he's freaking hot and she does want him. Like, I'm not going to go into it too deep because I'm aware we're also at like the 60-minute mark. But heart-wrenching, there's dark magic, there's bloodthirst, like to keep her alive at one point, she has to feed on him like in a cave. I can't tell you how great this was. I gave this 5 stars straight up, and as I said, just smashed it out. Crying, like heartbreak, as I said, just, and again, that old classic story of enemies to lovers, and fated, being almost fated with each other. So highly, highly, highly recommend. Carissa Broadbent, incredible writer, really, really loved it. And then I dove into Throne of Glass, and we've been talking about that in some previous episodes. So I did the Assassin's Blade, I've done Crown of Midnight, and now I've just jumped across to Iron Flame, but I will go back and do, what's next? Heir of Fire.
Yeah.
And that's my next couple of weeks of reading. So it's been a really fun year to just try some different authors in different kinds of books, different worlds. And for me, just sort of, again, being really, I'm just trying to be really open, as we've said before, like just really open to different genres, different authors, trying new things, not just sticking to my old favorites. So I feel like if you looked at my Goodreads, you'd be like, she is all over the place. But that's been really fun. So it's been a really good year. I'm looking forward to next year.
Yes, and I think what we're going to do is also put together a little Christmas list of book suggestions that we think that could, be great for different people. Because we have, between the two of us, we have read a lot of books, and books that would be great as gifts, like autobiographies and biographies and beautiful fiction, fantasy, of course, but even books like, there's been books I'm sure in there that we've read about gardening or cookbooks that were incredible. So I think we're going to put together a little list of things that we think would be beautiful to be gifted. So you don't have to be deep into the romantasy genre to be able to appreciate that, or you don't have to even be like a voracious reader, but just something that is something that would be great to read on the holidays, or to flick through, or to give you a different perspective of life. And one of those will be my poetry book.
Yes, it will.
Shameless plug.
One that I give 10 stars.
So
10 out of 5. Highly recommend. Yes.
So that's going to be coming up. And then we've got heaps more episodes in the works, talking about things like, how important is the plot versus good writing? What makes a good spicy sex scene? What are the things that, every woman needs to read in a sex scene?
Yeah. What is our spice meter, our depravity meter?
That's right. I think there's just lots of things that we want to dive into. But if there's anything in particular that you're curious about, or that you would love to hear us discuss, or because you have got no one else to talk to about it, just drop it in the comments so that we can add it to the list, because currently our list is endless. We'll be doing this for quite some time, many years.
Very excited.
But I do have a line that I thought we could end with.
Great. Hit it.
His body is a symphony when it moves, a dark and dangerous symphony, and I want to sink into the music of it. Stay by my side tonight, he tells me, and if you're a good girl, maybe I'll treat you like a bad one after.
Oh, yeah. I love when there's a good girl in there.
And a bad one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, you can tell me after the episode what that's from, so I can add it to my list.
Well, it's definitely on my list of 2023 books, so talk about it.
Awesome. Love it.
Great. So we will see you next time.
Awesome. See you soon.
Ciao.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you felt like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you have been dying to have with someone, to discuss all the tiny details and possible plot twists of the books that you've recently read. Perhaps you don't have someone to chat to after you finish one of those epic books, so please give the show a follow, and we would be honoured to be your book-obsessed friends. But mostly though, we hope it was fun, it gave you a giggle, it made you gasp, or encouraged you to pick up a different author. Please share it with someone who you think would also love it, and drop us a review, letting us know what you loved and what you want to hear from us in the future. We will be back with another episode soon. Happy reading.